Have you ever had one of these chance encounters where, you're at a conference or a meeting and you happen to meet somebody whose approach, whose personality, who's just very being, you can tell is going to have a profound impact on your life? Well, this next guest is exactly that person for me. Sachin Patel, I met in Tucson at a conference, the Metabolic Health Day conference. And he is an incredible mind with an incredible heart who ran an early morning breath work workshop for attendees and exhibitors. I actually wasn't going to go, to be honest, but a friend of mine, Piper, I think you know Piper, who we both know well, she told me I was going. She encouraged me to go in her not so subtle way, which I love about her. And I showed up, and it was an incredible way to start the day. And I just had to learn more about you and how breath work has transformed your practice, because you are trained as a chiropractor. You're not trained as a breathwork practitioner, but your study of precision wellness has led you to understand the importance of breath and breath work for health and healing. And I know I want to learn more. I think our listeners of the Delivering Health podcast are going to be excited to learn more, and it's going to help transform their health and their lives. So thanks for spending some time with me.
Absolutely, John. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I am very humbled, and I receive that with an open and pure heart. I felt the same way. There was just a connection, and I'm excited to deepen our friendship and unpack this topic of breathing. That I want to first acknowledge that I'm standing on the shoulders of many giants who've come before me on this topic, and what I hope to do is, bring this ancient wisdom to the masses alongside other people like Patrick McEwen and James Nestor, and add my clinical background to the mix, add my own personal stories and family experiences to the mix, and make it a topic that is easy for people to understand. Because after all, we're all breath workers, right? Without breathing, we wouldn't be alive right now. So we've been all practicing breath work, but the problem is many of us haven't been trained in how to breathe. So now what I do is I make your breath work for you. And when you get your breath to work for you, your nervous system's happy, your physical body is happy, your emotional and spiritual body is happy. And now you become a force of nature, which is really beautiful, because the breath is the ultimate life force. And so when we teach people how to access this, which is something that's always been available to them, they say the answers are right under your noses, and nothing could be more true than breathing. So I appreciate this opportunity to share and hopefully inspire people, pun intended, to breathe better, live better, to love more, and really to understand that their body is their domain, and the breath is the steering wheel to access parts of them that they didn't even know existed and have full control over.
I remember you saying the morning we did the breath work, I think it was afterwards, you were talking to the group, and you even said, to inspire, and breathing in, inspire really is the root of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And, normally people like myself, I mean, we're going through our daily lives breathing, and you'll remind me, I don't remember what you said. I mean, how many times do people normally breathe a day? I mean, just unconsciously, people
Yeah,
aren't using
23,000.
how many? 23,000 a
23,000. Yeah.
day. That's incredible. That's incredible. So how did, in chiropractic school, which I believe you studied that, correct me if I'm wrong, before you got into breath work, how did you move from joint mobilization and nervous system balance using chiropractic to breath? Because as far as I know, that's not trained in any chiropractic school.
No, not at all. And most of what I do this day, I've graduated almost 21 years ago now, actually just over 21 years ago. Most of what I apply in my personal life and practice, I got the foundation in school, but the experience is what really matters when it comes to practicing, right? It's like you could learn about it in a book, but lived experience is so important. I didn't realize, Steve Jobs says you can really only connect the dots looking backwards. So I didn't realize at the time that tutoring head and neck anatomy, which is the hardest course in our training, working with cadavers and really understanding this area of the body quite well. I didn't realize how that would pay dividends, 25 years later after learning it and doing that process. Because uh, what I learned about myself is that I have a very curious personality. And what I try to do is I try to connect dots and industries and patterns and things like that that many people may not have. And I put ideas together and, put them into practice and they work. So I feel like my curiosity for life and my being a forever student is what led to these understandings. And of course, school gives us a background and it gives us a foundation to start with. But I think it's really my curiosity and just this ever evolving level of boredom. I get bored with things really quickly. So that I end up learning something, getting really good at it. I get bored of it and move on to the next thing. But I take pieces of what I learned with me. So my career has evolved, as a chiropractor and then, functional medicine. And now what I would say I do is called precision wellness. That led to breath work in my search for simplicity and sophistication and really a scalable tool that nobody has to buy anything. There's nothing to ship. You just have to learn how to do it, and you only have to learn how to do it once. I mean, it's really like the pinnacle of sophistication and simplicity, and everyone can benefit. So that led me to breath work, and now I get to teach this not only to practitioners, but I get to facilitate experiences for people like you had the opportunity to go through. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because that is a pinnacle experience. But the rest of what I teach people how to do is how to breathe when they're not doing breath work, and how to make their breath work for them instead of feeling like they're having to work for it. And when we understand this relationship, then so many cool things are possible. So it's been like an entirely evolutionary process for me. And some of the stories of what inspired me to do this work really come from, not only working with patients and clients, but also the experience of my son growing up and having cavities because he was a mouth breather, who then ended up needing to have a palatal expansion because he wasn't breathing correctly. So it altered the shape of his face, and it alters the shape of anyone's face who doesn't breathe correctly. We just didn't know any better. And so that's a story that I'm happy to unpack. And then my wife, who struggled with chronic neck tightness and shoulder pain, had immediate relief after having a tongue tie release. And so when we talk about breathing, we're talking about so many things. We're talking about fascia, we're talking about lymphatics, we're talking about the circulatory system, we're talking about the oral microbiome, the sinus microbiome, the lung microbiome. And it's a very all-encompassing topic that nobody's really given a lot of attention to. And I could never figure out why after I learned it. And it turns out nobody made it exciting enough for people to care. And nobody helped people connect all the dots, which is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and I think talk about it in terms of functional anatomy and functional physiology, because I remember from medical school, I mean, what was I taught about breathing? Well, there's, inspiration, expiration, what's called tidal volume, how deeply in and out you're breathing, VO2 max, how much oxygen you can breathe in, and maximum inspiration, maximum expiration, surfactants in the lung, that is the chemical in the lung that keeps the lung tissue from sort of sticking together, oxygen exchange in the lung. But as you can hear, it's all focused on the lung. I mean, maybe we talked a little bit about some muscles that affect that, like the diaphragm and a few other muscles, but oral microbiome, the palate, mouth breathing, none of that was ever discussed. So let's just start at how people normally breathe, what you observe, and maybe what the research shows, and how does that, what I'm going to call, and correct me if I'm going to wrong, I'm going to call it dysfunctional breathing or not optimal breathing, how people are usually, typically living their lives, and what effects that has on health. And then let's go into how somebody can start to recognize and understand how that can change and the benefits of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So about 50% of the population is a habitual mouth breather, 66% at night, which means that 2/3 of people sleep with their mouth open. And That's actually the worst position for you to sleep in, for your airway to be in, because it significantly impacts your recovery. And we can talk more about that later. The 50% during the day who are habitual mouth breathers just don't know any different. Or there's a preceding series of events that may have happened that led them to be habitual mouth breathers, because chances are it's uncomfortable or feels very difficult for them to breathe through their nose. So this goes back to my son's story. One thing that I never learned in chiropractic school, we learned all about posture, but I never learned about tongue posture. Did you know your tongue is actually a postural muscle? It holds the front of your head up. So when our tongue is in the roof of our mouth, it acts as a lever and holds our head up, which makes more sense because the cervical extensor muscles all the way in the back are mechanically disadvantaged. So when the tongue isn't in the right position, then the cervical extensors have to work harder to hold the front of the head up. So the position of the tongue makes a huge difference in pain. The tongue is directly connected to the shoulder via the omohyoid muscle. So there's a muscle in our neck called the hyoid bone, a bone in our neck called the hyoid.
So I'm
And
laughing
there's
because
a,
that's rarely, I mean, you rarely ever hear of that little, it's a tiny little bone, and it's actually
yeah,
not attached to any other bones. It's just
yeah,
floating there.
it's just floating around, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, not
so
floating. And I mean, I don't want listeners who don't understand anatomy to be confused. It's not like floating around and moving around your body. It's attached just by muscles, and typically bones are attached to other bones by ligaments.
right. Excellent, right? So that's where my head and neck anatomy came in to have this awareness,
Mm.
because the tongue connects, and really the hyoid bone acts as an anchor point, right? Or a pivot point, because of the way the angle of the neck is and the way the shoulder is positioned. You couldn't run a muscle straight to the back of the shoulder. So you have to have a muscle, you have to have a bone to anchor it to. And so the omohyoid muscle attaches to the shoulder. So the tongue is directly connected to the shoulder. And so, first things first is, where is the position of our tongue? If our tongue is incorrectly positioned, it's going to cause chronic neck pain. Now, then the question becomes, why doesn't everyone keep their tongue in the roof of their mouth in the right position? Well, one, nobody's taught us about that. In some cultures, it's a major faux pas to breathe through your mouth. And they probably didn't understand all the reasons I'm going to share. But in many cultures, it's a sin to breathe through your mouth. And now I understand why. Because when our tongue is correctly positioned in the roof of our mouth, pretend you're saying the letter N, making the sound of the letter N, na, na,
And nah.
na, right?
Mhm.
So where the back of your tongue hits, or your tongue hits, the front of your tongue hits, is around the back of your teeth. That's the correct position of your tongue. When your tongue is in that position, you can't breathe through your mouth. It seals your mouth, which then causes you to breathe through your nose. As a developing baby, the reason that's important is because we soothe ourselves by placing our tongue at the roof of our mouth. So if you think of a child who latches onto the mother's nipple hits the roof of the mouth, just where that point is that we identified. When a child is pacifying themselves with a pacifier, that's where the pacifier hits. When they're sucking their thumb, that's where their thumb goes, because it's a mudra point, which is an energy circuit that relaxes the nervous system. So just by placing our tongue at the roof of the mouth, we have better posture, less strain on our neck, and we also close this energy circuit, which soothes and calms our nervous system. And we've all experienced a child, you put a pacifier in their mouth and immediately they stop crying. They put their thumb in their mouth and they immediately stop crying, because us adults still have that feature as well.
So
But also have,
let me just stop you for just a sec, because as you're talking and you taught me about where the tongue position is, I put the tongue on the roof of my mouth towards the back of my teeth where you mentioned, and I'm realizing, and I was holding it there, and as you're talking, it's getting more and more fatigued, which makes me think my tongue is not naturally in that position. If that muscle is getting tired by me holding it there, it's not used to being there, which
mhm,
probably means I'm not holding my tongue optimally.
right. Most people don't, right? And I didn't. I did it. And I don't even know if I did or not, because I had no awareness around it. So 5 years ago, I had no awareness of tongue posture. So wasn't until I was 42 that I learned where my tongue should sit in my mouth.
So can that be
Then,
retrained? So it's just that becomes a habit, because right now, I mean, people just hold their body and their posture and their tongue habitually. It's not conscious.
yeah, it might take some practice. Um, And it might, again, take some awareness. Really, that's really what it is just bringing your consciousness and awareness to your breath. And we can certainly talk about how to do that. The other thing that happens is when our tongue is positioned in the roof of our mouth, it acts as a spacer. So if you think about your hard palate and your dental arch, your upper dental arch forms the roof of your mouth, but that's also the floor of your sinuses. So when our tongue is positioned in the roof of our mouth, it acts as a spacer, pushing the bones of the skull outwards. If our tongue is sitting in the bottom of our mouth, which is where it does for many people, then there's nothing pushing the center of our face outward. So then you end up with a narrow face, a narrow palate, a narrow pair of sinuses, and narrow breathing passages, which then makes it difficult for somebody to breathe through their nose because their facial anatomy has formed differently as a result of the position of their tongue. Now, where that might show up in people and young children is that they go to the dentist and the dentist says that they have overcrowding. There's no such thing as too many teeth or overcrowding of the teeth. The real problem is a small jaw, especially an upper palate. So when we took my son to the dentist, the first time we took him to the dentist, his mouth was full of cavities. And we were so embarrassed and so like shocked because we were feeding him healthy food, like no junk, no sugar, none of that stuff. And unfortunately, we went in and he had a bunch of cavities. And they said, Mr. Patel, here's the good news. Here's the bad news. The good news is all your son's teeth are going to fall out. I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound like good news, but it's true. He's baby teeth. And I'm like, what's the bad news? He's like, his mouth is full of cavities. And so we felt like such failures as parents, but it turns out it's because he was mouth breathing. Mouth breathing is the number one cause of cavities. And then we go to the dentist a few years later and they say, well, he's got overcrowding of his teeth and we're going to have to pull 2 teeth so all of his adult teeth can come in. And thank God I'm a chiropractor because I said, God don't make no junk. This doesn't make sense to me. And we're not taking the teeth out because the teeth are like fuses in your body, right? And that's maybe a different conversation, but they act like fuses in your body and they're connected through meridian points to all of your organ systems. And so I'm like, that doesn't make sense to pull his teeth out. And around that time, I started learning about James Nestor's work. He wrote the book Breath, which I feel like everyone should read, whether you're a practitioner or not, because it was life-changing for me. And I always want to mention James because his work helped me immensely. And he's such a great author. It's just a very entertaining book to read and it's easy to remember because the knowledge and the information is so profoundly simple and life-changing. So we ended up going to 4 different dentists and they all said the same thing because of course it's easy, pull the kid's teeth. So I'm super traumatizing, I'm sure, for a child. I'm like, I'm not putting him through like, that's a major surgery, right? To have 2 teeth pulled. And we ended up getting a palatal expander. All of his teeth came in beautifully. He's got a nice, beautiful smile. His breathing improved. He's been mouth taping every day for the last 5 years. Not a single cavity in his adult teeth. So imagine I didn't know this, right? The price that he would pay, he would have teeth missing. He would have a narrow airway. He'd probably still be a mouth breather because his mouth would not be, or his nose would not be sufficient for him to breathe through. He would have a crooked nose. That's what happens as well. And he would have a prognathic or retrognathic jaw. So it would change his posture and everything. And so that's why I get really passionate, especially speaking to people who have younger or, children who are going through developmental phases. It's never too late, even as an adult, but the way we breathe really changes the regulation of our nervous system. It changes the structure of our face. It changes the structure of our sinuses. It changes our nasal microbiome, our lung microbiome. Like so many things are affected by simply how we breathe. And it all starts by something as simple as putting your tongue in the roof of your mouth. That's literally how simple it is.
So there's so much to unpack in what you said, but I've got just 2 questions. One, since you mentioned that nothing essentially is there by mistake, God doesn't make mistakes and they're there for a reason. Do you believe that, or have you concluded that wisdom teeth also should not be removed?
Yeah. So here's the thing with wisdom teeth. It's again, our jaw is too small, right? And the reason our jaws have become smaller over time, if you look back at hunter-gatherer jaws, or even if you go back a few hundred years and you look at people's jaws, they were able to receive all their wisdom teeth. Now, the reason people's jaws are smaller, A, because of Weston A. Price's work about macronutrient deficiencies, but also because we don't stimulate our jaws enough.
Not eating
Our
enough fiber, not eating enough whole foods.
Right. And our
Yeah,
food,
chewing.
if people are eating processed foods are foods where the chewing has already been done for you.
Right.
So there's nothing to chew. It just melts in your mouth and disintegrates. So you don't even get proper stimulation
So
of the teeth and the the dentin and everything that holds it all together. And there's no stimulation of the jaw because
right,
everything
that
we're
takes
eating is so
years though
soft.
to change the structure and develop. That's developing over years. By the time the wisdom teeth start coming in, typically early teenage years,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, if that starts, is it too late to change the structure of the jaw? I mean, to start then with the chewing is this, I mean, I guess that's my question. So
Yeah,
a
it's
lot of people find themselves in a situation where they had teeth pulled as a kid, or they get to the point where, parents are looking at their kids who are early teenagers or late. My wisdom teeth didn't come in till I was in college. And,
mhm.
at what point, I guess it's two questions really. And this is going, I think, a little bit sideways from breath work, but I'm just fascinated by what you said. I mean, is
Sure.
it too late as a teenager to start to change the diet, to do exercises, to use a palate expander so that you don't have to have your wisdom teeth come in? And then what about the people who had teeth pulled when they were younger? Their parents made that decision. Are they
Mhm.
are they destined and essentially condemned to a life of a narrow palate and being a mouth breather and all the things that you mentioned that are so deleterious to our health?
Oh, here's a beautiful thing. One of the fastest adaptations that we have is learning how to breathe because our body insists that we breathe a certain way, and it and so it doesn't resist. So you can change, and I have pictures of myself actually from 5 years ago, where you can actually, and if you go back and look at old pictures of me, you'll see the structure of my face has changed. I haven't had any appliances put in. You can get palatal expanders. James talks about his experience. He got expansion in his upper palate, through dental procedures that anyone can get done, and it significantly changed his quality of life and the way he breathes. So it's never too late. And that's the beauty of breath. The earlier we start, the better. However, it's never too late. And no matter where you're at, like I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and in hindsight, again, connecting the dots, looking backwards, it was the worst thing I did in my life. My health took a significant decline after having my wisdom teeth pulled. And if I had to look at any inflection point in my life, it was when I had those teeth pulled. I ended up getting an infection, and it had to be on antibiotics. I think it wrecked my microbiome. I mean, thank God I feel like I've made like a really good bounce back and recovery from it. But if I was not in the career that I am now, my health would have been destroyed because I would have had no clue of what to do to fix it. So thank my lucky stars, I'm a chiropractor, functional medicine, practitioner, and I know how to restore my health. But if I was an accountant, I don't know how sick I would be right now.
So what I'm
So,
what I'm understanding is at really at any age, through the breath work and what you teach and your program, you can still change the structure of your palate. You can still
mhm,
create more, I'm going to say, breathing space. I don't know if that's the right word or not. And you can re-educate your tongue position, train your tongue to go in the healthier position for healthier breathing that then becomes a habit and it isn't even conscious. So
mhm.
so we're still up here, the lungs are down here. It's like I feel like we're missing a whole piece of this puzzle. And we're obviously, you started up here, so I've got to believe that it's such an important piece of all this that is,
Yeah.
is oftentimes overlooked.
Well, here's the thing, like most people don't associate that with breathing, right?
Yeah,
So that's the thing. That's the tragedy and the fallacy of the breath. It's like such this powerful invisible force. And the thought that's coming up for me, John, and I hope we can talk about God and whatever everyone
absolutely.
believes
Yeah,
is
we sure can.
I have, yeah, thank you. So I have like um this interesting relationship with breath because the more I studied breath, the more I believe in an intelligent design. And so Da Vinci said that the ultimate sophistication is simplicity. So then it begs the question, well, what's the most sophisticated thing that we know about? And it's the human body, which then means it should be simple to take care of it. So then I asked myself, okay, what's the simplest thing that I can think of that we can do that would is a simple yet also sophisticated, that is one thing that I do that affects multiple systems in the body simultaneously. So if all I have to do is put my tongue in the roof of my mouth and breathe through my nose every conscious waking moment, right? So every time I draw my attention, that's what I'm doing. Or I can learn how to make my breath work for me. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because that's an important concept. If that's all I have to do, and it affects my immune system starts in your nose, right? We think of the immune system and people say, well, 80% of your immune system's in your gut. Yeah, but you actually breathe 30 pounds of air a day. So you actually consume more air in a day than food in a week. And this is your initial defense against the outside world, right? You're eating 3 times a day, but you're breathing all day, 24/7. And so you're breathing in all this particulate, and that has to be filtered. And you actually make nitric oxide on from the bacteria on your tongue to help sterilize the air before it goes into the lungs, versus breathing through the mouth, which is the dirtiest part of our body. Um, per surface area, it has the highest amount of bacteria. There's over 700 different strains of bacteria. When we breathe through our mouth, it changes the pH of our mouth. It dries out our saliva, which protects us. It causes the overgrowth of anaerobic bacteria, which get lodged into our pockets in our teeth. And the pockets in our teeth have the surface area of our fist. So most people, because of their dysfunctional breathing, have an open wound the size of their fist in their mouth. And that inflammation and the cytokines and the bacteria basically gets into their circulatory system, and it all stems from how they're breathing. You know, the one of the most chronic diseases in America right now is periodontitis. So people's like mouths are rotting in their faces, and they don't even know that it's associated to the breath. So, you know, it has to start here, right? We have to understand like the top down effect of what breathing does for us to really appreciate the beauty of it and the intricacies of it and the sophistication of it, right?
And it's
As we
interesting.
get in,
Every dentist I've ever been to, most of them, at least on the intake form, it asks, do I snore or do I have sleep apnea? And I snore. I'm sure you could do a lot with that information and enlighten me, but I not once has anybody ever talked about breathing, mouth breathing, the relationship with periodontitis, the relationship with gum recession, or how to correct it. I mean, I snore, and the only thing my dentist told me I could do is have surgery and essentially put small little rods in the top of my hard palate. That was the solution. I said no, thank you. Mouth taping
yeah,
seems to help me, but I'm still snoring.
yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So snoring, I used to snore, and funny story, my wife accused me of snoring, and I was in denial about it because I didn't even think I was asleep yet. So she would poke me and tell me I'm snoring, and I would deny it. And then I found an app. It's
I'm
called Snore
laughing because
Lab.
I've done the same thing.
And
Yeah, what are you
then
talking about? I'm not snoring.
and then I turn this thing on, and it records you while you're sleeping all night. And I'm like, holy smokes, I'm not just snoring when she's telling me, I'm snoring all night.
Yeah.
And thankfully my score was below 25, and I wasn't apneic, but it's disturbed and dysfunctional breathing. And if it doesn't affect me, I mean, it certainly does, but it definitely affects my partner. And I'm like, that's disrespectful if I can do something about it. So what I learned is that you can actually get, and I'm going to connect you with my friend John. He's in Reno.
Mm-hmm.
I'd fly out to him for like a couple of days. You can get a proper. I had a cone beam scan done of my face, so I looked inside at all my facial structure to understand it better. I had detailed measurements done, and then you can actually you can even do Invisalign to widen the palate. Like it takes a little bit longer, but that's something that can be done. And then he actually did a laser procedure on me where he tightened the skin in the back of my hard palate so it doesn't fall into the back of my throat. Because what I also discovered is that my uvula is 10 millimeters longer than a normal uvula. So that causes disruption in the airway. And then there's swallowing exercises that you can do. I created a whole guide on how to stop snoring. And now my snore score is 0. So I'll send that over, for your listeners if they want a copy of it. And it's just really simple, like embarrassingly simple tongue exercises and swallowing exercises that you do that kind of gets the muscles working in the way that they were designed to. And then a few other small changes, and you're good to go. Like you can stop snoring within 7 days.
Yeah, if you send me that link, if you want to share that, I'll add it to the show
Sure.
notes. But we're gonna at the end here. I mean, let's mention it now. What's your website? I mean, people may want to hop in there. Now we've been talking.
Yeah. So I'll give my breathwork website because it's
Yeah.
related to this conversation. So if they go to breathwork with Sachin, and my name is Sachin, SACHIN.com, breathworkwithsachin.com. Every tool I've ever created for breath is free. So I've got a full breathwork experience, much like the one John had a chance to experience, a recorded version. You're welcome to share that with your friends when you get access to it, and you're welcome to listen to it and use it however you wish. So it's a full on experience with music and everything. I've got guides on how to breathe. I have a guide called Breathe Like This, Not That, so you can understand how to breathe circumstantially in different scenarios and, again, make your breath work for you. I've got notes for my James Nestor retreat that I went to, and keynotes, and all kinds of great, resources. And it's all free because I believe that the best things in life are free, and this is the best thing in our lives that I can think of right now. So I want to make sure that everyone has access to it.
Amazing resource that you've put together. And we haven't even touched the surface on the effect on the nervous system. And that's what I hear personally about most is the autonomic nervous system and, sympathetic or the fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
We're stressed out. Everybody's, chronically stressed, and rebalancing that using breath. Nobody that I've ever talked to discusses it in the way that you've talked to with me today, up till now. I'm sure we're only scratching the surface. I mean, we've been talking for, gosh, a half hour now, I think, and could continue for much longer. But, are there any other points within breath work that you think are really important that people understand beyond just balancing, stress? Because I think that's commonly understood. What are some
Mm-hmm.
surprise things that you believe would surprise people to learn about breath that they might not know?
Yeah, great question. So, kind of going back to intelligent design, right? And, I think of proper breathing as the lead domino. So, when we breathe correctly, we enhance our immune function because now we start making the right bacteria to sterilize the air that's coming in. When we breathe through our nose, we temperature regulate the air, moisture regulate the air, regulate the air, and perfect the air essentially before it goes into the lungs. When we breathe through our nose, we recover about 30% of the moisture that we would normally breathe out. So breathing through our mouth is actually dehydrating, whereas breathing through our nose is rehydrating. When we breathe through our mouth, it acts as a diuretic, which means that we have to use the bathroom more frequently. And especially if somebody's breathing at night through their mouth, they're going to have to wake up and use the restroom because, again, breathing through the mouth acts as a diuretic. It changes different hormones in the body that cause us to have to go to the bathroom. And when we start kind of looking at it through that lens, immediately there's a quality of life improvement. When our
Well,
diaphragm moves up and down
yeah, well, just
23,000
quickly,
times a day.
what I think about when you say that is and we'll get back to that. I'll bring back up the diaphragm in just a sec. But what I think about is men with BPH who have to get up to go to the bathroom at night. If their breathing is corrected, if they are mouth breathers, could that result in them perhaps not having to get up as much and improving their quality of life, not having to get up to go to the bathroom as much?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't even tell people that's a benefit. And they tell me that, oh my God, I'm not having to use the bathroom. Could it be the mouth taping? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, because mouth breathing is a diuretic.
So just
And
that simple as mouth taping.
yep, exactly.
Amazing. So
And and
okay,
and it
yeah, go
and it's
ahead.
really, nasal breathing, right? So the purpose of mouth taping is not to tape your mouth closed. The purpose of mouth taping is to ensure, so I look at it as a daily insurance policy to ensure that for the next 7, 8 hours, I'm going to be breathing through my nose. Because the only time I would be breathing through my mouth is if my nervous system is in a fight or flight state, right? So think of, I like to use extreme examples because it just illustrates the point. So if you were sprinting as fast as you could, right, that would be a maximum fight or flight response. And I would want to be rapidly breathing in and out through my mouth because I need to move a lot of volume of air because I want my breath to work for me. So every time I take a deep breath in and out, my lungs are expanding and contracting, squeezing my heart My diaphragm is rapidly moving up and down, increasing pressure with every breath, because in fight or flight, we need more blood pressure because we need to pump blood to our arms and legs, not just down to our trunk. So, of course, I want to breathe to assist that process, right? And then there's a spectrum. But if I'm sitting and meditating, right, how would I be breathing? I would be breathing slow and through my nose, pressurizing the air, slowing it down before it comes in, expanding my alveoli, getting 20% more oxygen. Like there's all these other benefits that come with it. So if we look at the polar opposites, right, then mouth breathing while you're sleeping is somewhere in the middle.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so it's but leaning towards sympathetic dominance.
So I'm sorry I cut you off before, but I talked. You said something about the diaphragm, and I
Yep.
think
So
please
the diaphragm is
continue.
an interesting muscle because it sits in the middle of the body. It The word diaphragm means horizon. And so, there's above the horizon, which is the lungs and the heart, and then there's below the horizon or the soil of the body, if you will, which is the digestive system. And so the diaphragm is a muscle that has three key functions. One is that it acts as a respiratory muscle, but remember, as it's moving up and down, it's acting like a piston and it's pumping the trunk organs. Okay, so it's now acting as a piston to pump the lymph of the trunk organs. Some of the biggest lymph nodes in our body are underneath the diaphragm. And again, if I was an intelligent creator, that's exactly where I would put them, because that diaphragm is going to move up and down 23,000 times a day. In our body, we have three hearts. The first heart is the traditional heart that we think of. The second heart is the diaphragm. And the third heart is the soleus muscles. So they pump blood from the lower extremities back
Just
up
so
to the
people know,
chest.
soleus muscles are in your calves.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Thanks. Our calf muscles. So these are the three major pumps in the body. But the one that's, the heart beats about 100,000 times a day. The lungs take about 23,000 breaths a day. And you might take, around 20,000 steps a day. So these three systems, or 10, whatever the number is. So these three hearts are constantly pumping. They're the rhythm of the body. The diaphragm is interesting because you can change the way you breathe to slow down or increase your heart rate. So you can indirectly control the heart rate by controlling the respiratory rate. If I had you start breathing rapidly in and out, your blood pressure and your heart rate would predictably increase every single time. So it is a predictable way to change our cardiovascular function. So the diaphragm pumps the heart, it pumps the lymph, and it acts as a conduit for the myofascial system. The myofascial system is, imagine like a spider webs that are connecting every single cell in your body together simultaneously. Every nucleus in your body, the nucleus of every cell in your body is connected simultaneously through the myofascial system. When I took anatomy, we would cut through the myofascial system because it just looked like cobwebs. We didn't know what it was. We just thought it was junk, but it's actually this intricate late lattice of um, of tubing that connects all of our body parts together simultaneously. The myofascial system is referred to as the emotional hard drive for the body. So they say the issues are in our tissues. Well, it's only partly true. The issues are actually buried in our myofascial system. So oftentimes, the pain that people experience doesn't show up on scans, doesn't show up on MRIs, doesn't show up as something structurally wrong with them. But the problem is there's trauma stuck in their fascia. And so the diaphragm acts as the pump to move emotion. This is why when people do breath work, what we're really doing is shaking that emotional tree. Okay, with every breath that we're taking, we're shaking that emotional tree, waking up the myofascial system, and then releasing that emotion with our breath. This is why so many people cry and relive traumatic experiences and release them as a result of the breath work that they're doing. Because the way we suppress emotions is through the breath. I mean, think about how many times you may have been told to stop crying. Well, the only way to stop crying is to stop breathing first. And the only way to stop breathing is to hold your diaphragm really still, which then creates trigger points in the diaphragm, which then leads to short, shallow breathing, which then leads to sympathetic dominance as an adult. So you have unexplained anxiety, you have unexplained sympathetic related issues, and the list goes on and on. So the diaphragm plays a huge role in our health, and it's not just limited to helping us breathe.
Well, and I've heard from people who do myofascial release clinically on patients, that experience where patients will just start crying on the table when there's a release in a certain part of their their bodies. So it's interesting that through breath work, you can get to that release as
Mm-hmm.
well, both physical and emotional. And when you talked about the breathing and rapid breathing versus slow breathing and increasing your heart rate and deep breathing, what I was taught was the physicochemical control of the breath was due to the carbon dioxide concentration in the blood. So when the blood is you're breathing out, you are increasing your heart rate to circulate more oxygen. But when you're breathing out rapidly, what I'm talking about, when you slow down your breath, the carbon dioxide starts to accumulate more, and it slows down your heart rate. Is that still an accurate? I mean, this is 20 years ago that I was taught this in physiology, and is that still an accurate statement?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. It's called the Bohr effect, and when people might think that the more we breathe, the more oxygen is delivered to our tissue, and the opposite is actually true. The less we breathe, the more oxygen is delivered to our tissue, because as CO2 builds up in the body, what ends up happening is there's a change in the pH, and that resulting change in the pH dumps more oxygen to the tissue. So with every breath we take, we only absorb about 20% of the oxygen that we're breathing. The other 80% is exhaled in our exhalation, which means that with every breath we take, we actually have 5 additional breaths that are in that same breath that we took. And so think about this from the perspective of survival. If somebody was knocked unconscious and they stopped breathing for whatever reason, then if that breath that they take had more oxygen in it to deliver to the tissue, that person doesn't have to be breathing for several minutes in order for and before they turn into a vegetable, so to speak, right? Or before they die. So the importance of CO2, and people are going to be learning more about CO2 in the coming years, and you're going to see books that are being written about it. CO2 is a very important molecule in our body and in our physiology that has greatly been understudied. And when when you learn how to make your breath work for you, you can manipulate the way you breathe to change CO2 concentrations in your body. And what's also interesting about CO2, I hope I answer your question, but what's also interesting about CO2 is that hypocapnic states, which means low CO or hypercapnic states, I'm sorry, states can actually stimulate stem cell production as well.
So just to be
So,
clear, hypercapnic means rapid breathing, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Just want to make sure for people who may not understand that term. I mean, basically, really fast breathing you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about high CO2 levels. So,
Got it. Okay. So
yeah,
elevated CO2 levels, which occur when? Which occur in
elevated
different.
CO2 levels occur when we slow down our breathing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead. What happens with that when that occurs?
Yeah. So when we do this, when we increase our CO2 tolerance, as an example, we can increase stem cell production. We can increase anti-tumor growth factors like P53, and we can also achieve altered states, which is quite beautiful as well. So changing the CO2 in our body really can have dynamic effects on how we feel and how we function.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I could talk to you for hours, and I do look forward to learning more and spending time on your website and you learning more about your resources. You mentioned your website. Tell people again what it is, please. And because
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the main resources they can get at breathworkwithsachin.com, www.breathworkwithsachin.com. And if they want to learn more about our practice and what we do, breathwork is one spoke in the wheel of our metabolic system that we offer. And we teach people, breath is one of the things we teach you about yourself. And we get into all the other topics of health optimization and health creation. We do genetic testing, food inflammation testing. We use wonderful products like the ones John makes to help our clients heal and get, feeling their best. You can go to becomeproof.com and learn more about that. And if you're a practitioner, we license that system to practitioners so that you're able to implement what we do into your practice as well.
I love that. Becomeproof.com. We'll make sure both of those are URLs are on the website. Thank you. I learned a lot. I've been really during this entire conversation when I wasn't talking, trying to get my tongue to stay up in the top of my mouth. And I look forward to accessing your system and learning more and improving my own breathing and hopefully get rid of my snoring. That would be incredible.
Yeah, I'd start with the Snore Lab. I think you already
Yeah.
have it.
Okay.
And then just document what your score is, and then just do the exercises every day and watch the transformation. Even Snore Lab, I have no affiliation with them. I probably should, but Snore Lab, um, you can get the paid version, and there's actually anti-snoring exercises in there that are included as well. So I'll send you
Amazing.
my stuff, but you can take a look at
But you
their
also mentioned a
resources too.
doc who could evaluate this a little
Yes,
bit. So
yes,
I'll look
yeah.
forward to getting that from you.
Dr. John Bakke, Reno, Nevada. He changed my life, so I want to give him a shout out.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. Be
My
well.
pleasure. Thank you.